both the State Building Commission and Management Council. It consists of 3 members of the executive branch of the top 5 electeds, and then 3 legislative members. They're not all here today, but I have the co-chair, Senator Landon, from the legislative branch, and I'm Christy Racinas, the state auditor. So we have, I believe this is our first public meeting. We have Representative Banks online on the Zoom, and then Treasurer Meyer is not here, and nor is Representative Nicholas. And that's, so we have some of us, half of us here and half of us not. So going ahead and getting started, this is our first public meeting, I believe. So by way of introduction, this committee consists of those 6 members, but we've also had a very talented team of agency staff that has assisted us and been indispensable, from state parks, from state museums, from the Department of Education, so we appreciate them as well. Some of them are in the audience. And then one of the things that we have done is contracted with a company called Dimensional Innovations, who we will introduce here today, and they will give an overview of the project. We have been meeting for, has it been a year, Mr. Co-Chair, or not quite?
Madam Co-Chair, I think it's been at least a year, maybe a little over a year. Yeah.
Yes, in a working group format, and so this is sort of a checkpoint as to where we have come so far, and hoping for some, a positive presentation and commentary today. So, Mr. Co-Chair, any opening remarks before we turn it over to our contractors, Dimensional Innovations?
Well, thank you, Madam Co-Chair. I would just, I didn't have an opportunity to tip my hat to Representative Banks. Have really appreciated serving with you on this subcommittee, Chad, and obviously we're going to miss you going forward. I hope that doesn't mean you won't come over to Cheyenne and stay involved. You're valuable to the state of Wyoming, and want to salute all of those ad hoc members of our subcommittee who have sat through a lot of time and effort to get to this point. So it's been a pleasure to serve with them, and a pleasure to serve with our professional consultants from DI, and we look forward to hearing from Nigel and his crew coming up.
Okay, and with that, I think we'll go ahead and turn it over to Nigel Morley, who is the creative director for Dimensional Innovations, for a project of or an overview of the exhibit and wayfinding project.
Okay, oh, it worked. Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nigel Morley, creative director at Dimensional Innovations. I'm excited the opportunity to share this with everyone here, and wanted to express our thanks to the co-chairs, Senator Landon and Auditor Racine. It's been a pleasure working on this. It's been an honor working on this, and an exciting challenge. I'm pleased to be able to show you what progress we've made, where we're at right now, and start to get some more feedback as we keep moving forward. Hopefully. I guess I need to share my screen. I thought it was shared. Here we go. Thanks for your patience. All right. So I thought it'd be helpful to sort of start and kind of walk us through the journey that we took to get to this place. Starting with the assignment to look at the People's House. This is what this is about, and which is delightful to finally put this in a more public forum, because ultimately that's the congregation of people that we're talking to, and that this place matters for. The reason it came about is because after this extensive multi-year renovation, we had this glorious, wonderful place with amazing stories that we wanted to tell. So the inspiration we got from this place, this beautiful restoration, this beautiful renovation that happened and that rejuvenated this building, provided for us an opportunity to engage with citizens, to educate students, to increase tourism. There's some challenges with that. It's a big building, it's a large complex. There are many ins and outs and rooms and spaces and stories that we don't all know about. So it can be overwhelming. The scale of the place can be disorienting, and it can also be intriguing. But what are those stories? How can we address that, those challenges? And the solution is a wayfinding system that helps people to feel welcome, and an interpretive exhibits that draws visitors in, helps them to understand the stories of Wyoming and celebrate Wyoming as a state and the capital itself and the government that works here. What is wayfinding? Wayfinding is the thing that helps you feel at home, helps you not feel lost when you walk into a space. So you know where to go to find the restrooms or a particular meeting room, or you don't feel like everywhere is different or strange to you. Wayfinding helps you have that sense of welcome. It helps to address those people that are challenged in mobility as well, with ADA accessibility, entrances and elevators, helping them to find where those things are so they can enjoy the privilege of being in the people's house as anyone else can. Interpretive exhibits range in, there are all sorts of types of interpretive exhibits, but the primary goal of them is to tell the story that you want to tell in an engaging way that helps to educate you, inform you, and inspire you to learn more. It will also sort of help to engage tourists and help them to increase the value of their visit and want to see more and learn more. The goals that we developed from this were, first of all, to demonstrate government in action. And I'm going to move through this fairly quickly because there's a lot of stuff we want to talk about here. So, co-chairs, if you want to tell me to slow down or go back to something, please let me know. But project goals: demonstrate government in action, promote engaged citizens, and prepare future leaders. Also, to promote Wyoming pride. The people that will benefit from that are Wyoming residents, students and teachers, youth groups, families on vacation, small and large tour groups that aren't associated with the school, perhaps. There's also a fairly decent contingent of people that like to visit all these different state capitals and get their little passports marked. All those audiences are important to us because we want the citizens of Wyoming to benefit from the preservation of this building and everything that goes on here and the historical and cultural significance of this space, and the benefits of promoting tourism, what that does for the city and for the state and for the capital. Where is that going to happen? It's throughout this whole Capitol Square, from the building, starting with the Capitol grounds themselves, the Capitol building, the Capitol extension, the Hirschler east and west buildings, all will be touched by what we do here, especially wayfinding, as you try to navigate this large complex space. We also want to make sure we reach different types of visitors. We divide them into 3 different types of visitors. There are skimmers, the ones that just kind of glance over stuff. They may just read the headlines and look at the photos. There are browsers that start to dig in a little more than most people would. And then we can call them gorgers, the ones that read every single syllable, look at every single image, even the credit lines. There are also different types of visitors as well, some that focus most on visuals, some that like auditory experience, and some like hands-on. So we want exhibits and that addresses all those types of audience, all those ranges of types of experiences that they might expect, using all sorts of different types of techniques that will go into more detail as we move through this conversation. And that's what it is. It's a conversation between this building and the visitors, the public that come here to enjoy this space, to learn about this space. And that conversation is important because this is the people's house. And that's got to be the focal point of everything that we put in here and the stories that we tell, is to make this place envelop those people and make them understand how important they are. I love this image. It's the same spot on the building from the Constitutional Convention in 1888, and then I think after the refurbishment in 2017 or something like that. But they're so different, but they're so the same, and I think that's an amazing truth about what this building means to these people that make up the population of Wyoming. Who do we want to reach specifically? And we looked at the multiple different audiences, and we talked a bit about this already, the primary and secondary audiences, starting with Wyoming citizens as our primary and tourists as our secondary audiences. And they encompasses students from age to 12, most of those through tour groups, but some with family visits. Students aged 13 to 15, most of those, again, with tour groups. And Wyoming teachers who bring those groups here. We need to make sure that we create experiences that engage them and help them to tell the stories they want to tell as well. Couples, age 55 plus, coming here on travels. We talked about the sort of the capital passport stampers, those type of audiences, and then also families with young children. Families range 25 to 44 years old. Excuse me. So this is the conversation. This is the relationship, the conversation we're trying to have, and what is the story that we're having between those two? What are those stories? So we've developed a content outline of the stories that we want to tell and feel are powerful things that can be told within this building, within this campus. We'll have interpretive messages and interpretive message. Let me just kind of hit on some of these because I think it's important. The capital is here for the people of Wyoming, and the state government is here to serve the people. Wyoming government and its capital are accessible to all. What takes place in the capital embodies the spirit of Wyoming. Wyoming is unique. The actions taken and decisions made in the capital have shaped the history of the territory and its state. State government has specific functions which impact our daily lives, and people of all ages, including Wyoming's youth, can actively participate in and shape public policy by researching issues, contacting legislators, attending committee meetings like this, and more. The architecture and history of the Capitol building are significant. And then the goals, the objectives that we have here, and I know this is a lot, but it kind of drives a lot of everything that we do and how we shape the content. Make Wyoming's government more accessible and understandable, empower visitors and instill a sense of ownership in their government. Visitors leave inspired by the capital's history and its culture. They aspire to vote and actively participate. It should communicate the role of state government and how it impacts daily life. It should convey the need for and importance of ongoing preservation of the Capitol Square. It should identify key events, individuals, and themes in Wyoming's history, especially as those relate to the government process. Connecting history and contemporary civic processes throughout. Every student experiences the Capitol in person and or virtually. And for those students who cannot visit the Capitol in person, that should be a goal. And highlight all regions across Wyoming and celebrate the state's culture and heritage. The focus is on what happens here in this building and the role of this building. There are so many stories to tell about Wyoming, but they can't all be told in this building, and maybe they're not best told in this building anyway. So a lot of those other stories happen at the State Museum and the Digital Learning Center, the governor's mansions, and other interpretive sites. Here, we're going to focus on the interpretive content of the Capitol building and the state government, executive, and legislative branches. But there's a lot to say, even within those confines. We'll start with exploring early Wyoming history. We'll move into the state government with territorial government. We'll look at that starting in 1868. Talk about statehood and all those significant elements that help to define a state from its first to its facts, to its flags, to its seal, and its geography and landscape. there's an awesome story to tell on women's suffrage in this space, and that's something we want to celebrate and share. Just some of the basics of the functionality of the space, starting with the executive branch and its roles and duties, as well as the elective offices, so people understand what these offices are, what they mean, and learn a bit about some of the people that have had those roles in the past and the significant impact they've had on this wonderful state. Including, and we talked about the governor, talk about the Secretary of State, the state auditor, state treasurer, and the superintendent of public instruction. We'll look at the legislative branch and its function, its roles, talk about the fact that this is one of few citizen legislators, legislative bodies. Simple things like how a bill becomes law, and some of the first and notable bills that started here in Wyoming. We'll go into more detail about the Senate and then also the House. It's both of their roles and duties, the original territorial council and House of Representatives, and talk about some of the former representatives that help us to learn things about our past, the choices that we made, and the road that we're going down. The judicial branch, we'll spend a little bit of time on this, but mostly because the territorial Supreme Court lives here. But a lot of that story is going to happen at the Judicial Learning Center. Basic things about being a citizen. We want to share that story. They walk into the people's house. We want them to know what that means. What does it mean to be the people, and what role citizens have, and what impact they can have in participation. Well, we want to talk about the sovereign nations, the Eastern Shoshone tribe and the Northern Arapaho tribe, and their history and their relationship to this land, and the impact they've had on our move forward. Talk about the media, what their role is, and how they interact with government and citizens legislative body. There's wonderful stories to tell about the Capitol art and architecture. We want to go through all different steps that got us to the building that we're in now, from the construction in 1888 on this plain out in Wyoming to the wonderful and amazing building that we're sitting in right now. And all the architecture that we should celebrate in this space. There's some amazing details from the rotunda to the trompe-l'oeil to the woodwork. And there's just so many wonderful things about this building that we want to make sure that people visit here notice and understand and appreciate and see the significance of. There's some amazing artwork in this building. In the galleries throughout the building, there's some beautiful pieces of art and paintings that help us to tell stories about the state, and those are worth celebrating and learning about, especially when we focus on the statues of the Four Sisters up at the top of the rotunda. Those are great roads into some great stories about what's important in Wyoming. Some basic nuts and bolts stuff, like looking at those vaults downstairs, which are, I hope you spent some time looking at those. They're wonderful pieces of history, the artwork on those doors. Some of the simple things like just maintenance and understanding about the caretakers that at one point actually lived in this building. There's some fascinating things that engage some audiences and make them want to search and explore more what we're talking about, Capitol myths and truths. Many of you probably know about the fossils in the floor tiles, but there's a number of other things in here that if we sort of highlight, it'll help to make their engagement with the building more rewarding and fun. So that's sort of where we've mapped out the content. There's a lot of stories to tell. How we want to tell them, we have to develop a design approach that allows people to engage with that content and that feels like it belongs in this space. So we developed a design system that helped us to do that. That's shaped by the building itself, and influenced by the art and architecture of the building. and inspired by some of these wonderful details that I've captured here on this page, from the typography used in different places to the patterning that you see with the trompe l'oeil and the materiality that you see throughout this place. So because there's so much amazing things here, there's no reason to go somewhere else to create a design that will work for it. We should trust the building and let the building speak and be the design sort of Bible for what we do in this place. And out of our inspiration from this building, we developed a design system. Let me highlight this. When we talk about trust the building, we're talking about complementing or contrasting the building design, not trying to outdo it or compete with it. Don't simply duplicate it. Design should point to the building, not replace it. It's like you don't want the arrow pointing at the thing to be more interesting than the thing itself. But they should both feel and work together. A design system encompasses all the things that we need to create these interpretive panels and other materials. So it includes typography, the fonts that we choose, the color palette, the patterns that are engaged, the imagery that we use, and the material that we use to build these exhibits. So using the inspiration for the building, as I said, and from other typographical examples that are aligned with the time period that this building was created, we've developed this set of typography and it addresses all the different possibilities of type, from headlines to subheads, to alternate subheads and body copy and pull quotes and even captions and credit lines. Then we looked at the color palette, and again referencing the remarkable colors throughout the building. There's a lot of consistency across the building. There's slight variations. So what we did was make this sort of adapted color palette that picks up on the colors from throughout. So you'll see these beautiful rusty burgundies in here. You'll see the darker browns in some of the trim. You'll see even some greens details. There's a little bit of blue here and there, gold and beige, and all of those together work into this wonderful palette that will allow us to tell compelling stories because of the visual impact of how those things work together. Also, the trompe l'oeil is a gorgeous element within this building. And we felt like it seemed like the sensible thing to use as a pattern approach if we wanted to add pattern detail to any of the signage. So picking up on some of those details, and we'll continue to explore that as part of this design palette, design system. Material palette, we want to lean into the wood and all the natural materials here. There's some gold, obviously, some of the cornice, the tops of columns, and obviously the dome of the Capitol building itself, the wood and the marble that we see throughout. And then glass will also be a component because of the vitrines, the display cases that we use. Treatments for imagery as well, where appropriate. We want to tie the imagery and sort of help it all sort of glue together, have the same sort of visual impact and influenced by the color palettes of old vintage photography and paper. So from all those things that I just went over, we started to develop some sort of graphic panel, some sort of approach of how those things might come together. And this is just the start of that exploration of you can see how the patterns are used, how the typography is used, how the different color palettes and images are used, highlights of little gold lines and detail lines, pattern is used, and photography as layers in both as hero moments and as well as backdrops and texture. Also looked at developing a mark just that will be primarily focused on the collateral and maybe online presence that helps to sort of define this experience, the exhibit experience, looking at that in different ways. From all that, we started to work on exhibit concepts. And we're going to start to, and let me show you some of those directions that we're starting to explore for the exhibits where all those stories might live. Whether they're panels on the wall that play off the arches in the space and the wood and using the color palette and typography that we just discussed. Exhibit cases that play off the wainscoting in the wood and then clean glass above so it doesn't interfere with some of the beautiful details in the trompe l'oeil. interactive timeline. This might be an interactive timeline that might live somewhere where someone could follow the history of the building and adjacent events that happen during the building's progress. There might even be some experiences where visitors could engage with governors or old historic figures that we would sort of project on the screen so people could listen to them and hear their stories and engage with them as if they were really there in an environment. It gives you kind of a sense of some of the directions we're taking with the exhibit design. Wayfinding is obviously another important component. It's really important. In fact, I don't know how many people got lost trying to find this room, but that's going to be vital for people to experience this place and feel at home and feel welcome and not like a stranger. Wayfinding matters. It gets you from point A to B, and that's not a simple thing when we think about a building like this, which is really complex. It's not an easy thing to get from A to B. It's not a simple line. It's sort of a progression, and we call it progressive disclosure. So this is a good example. Think about it like you're going to find your seat in a stadium. When you get out of the car, the sign next to your car doesn't say seat 22, row F, section 200. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that until you get 2 feet away from your chair. What it says first is entry, and then at the entry it says concourse, and then at concourse it says section, and then at section it says row. And that's how you kind of get to your space, and that's how wayfinding works most effectively. So in this example, we start at the sidewalk. We figure out how to get to the entry to the building, from the sidewalk to the building, from the building to the entry to the floor that you're heading to, or the level, from the floor to the wing of that floor that you want to go to, from that wing to the area within that wing, and within that area to the actual destination. Now, some places don't need all these layers. Some places you just need 2 signs to get to where you're going. Some places need more. But we want everybody to feel like they can walk with some momentum and feel like they know where they're going and they can get to where they want to go, to get to that meeting, to participate in government and not be encumbered by being lost and feeling like a stranger. And we started to play with what some of those signs might look like, playing off some of the details in the trompe l'oeil and the materials that are already in use here. So we don't repeat something that's already being done, but we add to it and make sure that the system works as a group. The exhibits are going to live, as I said earlier, throughout the building. So I thought it might be helpful just to give you a sort of a broad 30,000-foot view of where those might live. I don't know how well you can see this, but all those blue dots represent different possible exhibit elements. The green dots represent all the different wayfinding. So here on the garden level, you can see that we're telling stories in these little vestibules. We're telling stories down this corridor by the governor's side of the building, and we're telling stories, and probably might be where that timeline might live, over here on the west end, the west side, I think, yes. If we move up to the first level, we're talking about the different state offices up here. We're helping people find the places that they want to find with directories, helping them to feel welcome as they move into the space. As we go up to the second floor, there's a lot of what we call reader rails around that rotunda, so help us to tell the story of, this might be a great place to tell the women's suffrage story because of the significance of the historical Supreme Court space, and just at the top of the screen here. Also a place to focus on the Constitution, and then telling the story of what happens in these great chambers on either end of the building. We can explore that even further up here where there's less of a traffic problem with people coming in and out, and they can access the gallery area more efficiently than the public might be able to at the second level. Again, more stories around the center of the rotunda. Maybe this is a great spot to talk about those 4 statues, the 4 sisters. Even as we get down into the extension and the statues that are down there, and the other stories that we can tell that those statues start to hint at. This would be a wonderful place for that. And then and this is also a place where we want to celebrate all the different spaces within Wyoming. So help people appreciate that Wyoming is more than just what's around Cheyenne, but all the different corners of the state. And then as we move into the Herschel building, the focus will be predominantly on wayfinding, so people can find locations within that facility. Back out to the grounds, again, wayfinding is critically important. When someone gets out of their car and walks to the curb, they want to feel like they're going to the right entry, especially when it's goodness knows how many degrees outside. They want to be able to know that they're walking to the door that's going to get them to the place they want to get to. But there's also some great stories to tell on the outside about the building itself, about its history and its expansion over time. So it's definitely worth telling those stories out here, as for those people that come when the building is closed, for example, on a holiday, they would at least have that valuable experience. When we think in terms of budget, so what is the impact of this kind of approach? And it's probably best to think of it in terms of what portion of that, the huge investment that we've made in the refurbishment of this building. This measures just about 2.5% or less of that budget, but it may be the most significant, most critical component in welcoming and engaging our fellow Wyoming citizens in this restored People's House. It's almost like this building is amazing, but without the dome, I don't think it would have the impact and punch that it does. The dome is like that little extra 2.5% that can make all the difference. When we start to think in terms of schedule, if we start from today, we'll be working through the design and content through September of 23, and then moving into engineering and fabrication in 24 through installation starting around June of 24. And I feel like I would race through that really fast, but I wanted to give you the highlights and the overview of what we've been looking at and exploring. Hopefully that is helpful and engaging.
Thank you, Nigel. And yes, that was a brief overview, and we all know that we've spent hours and hours and days sort of hashing through these smaller questions to get to where we are now, as far as, you know, what stories do we want to tell, and sort of defining our scope, and doing a little bit of a triage on all of these things. You know, we think all of these things are important, you know, but in all honesty, wayfinding has risen to the top as sort of, you know, really, really super critical as we've used this building. And I think, you know, this is sort of the last piece to finishing the renovation of the Capitol. And one of the positive things we've had from having that be delayed is we've had a chance to live in the building a little bit. And so a lot of this product has been much better informed by the fact that we've lived here, we've worked here, and a few issues have cropped up that we may not have thought of. And, you know, things we may have worried about maybe aren't that big of a deal. So I think you did a wonderful job. Do you have anything else to add before we move on to public comment?
Madam Co-Chairman, thank you. Very well stated. Nigel, I thought it was just a great 30,000-foot view. We've spent a lot of hours with a lot of our experts sitting back here. So helpful, and just kind of exciting to get a look at where we are now. We've got a ways to go and a short time to get there, but it's really, I used the analogy the other day up in my neck of the woods. It just seems like trimming a door takes a lot longer than putting up the sheetrock. And that's where we are. We really are to the finished part of this grand effort, and it's the piece that I think is going to really put the frosting on the cake. And it's been a pleasure to work with you thus far, and great job today. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
So with that, Mr. Co-Chair, I would go ahead and move into the public comment period. Do we have anyone online that has registered for public comment? Okay. Do we have anyone in person that would like to make any public comment? Going once? Come on up, Mr. Garrett. Please identify yourself and address the committee.
You're very kind, Madam Auditor, Mr. Chairman. Richard Garrett, I live here in Cheyenne. I'm a citizen of Wyoming. I was born in Casper. Got to Cheyenne as quick as I could, though. I'm an appreciator of this building. I think you all know that. I'm just in love with it. I'm in love with the work that's gone into it, the devotion of those that have contributed so much. We've gotten a bargain. I think 2.5% of the budget that has gone into this is an extraordinarily important expenditure, and I could, in my own mind, justify a lot more. If we don't tell our own story, somebody else is going to tell it for us. I'm grateful that you're working to tell that story and that you're taking care of our beautiful capital for the next 100 years and all future generations. So well done to you.
Thanks. It's good to hear.
So, thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, just real quickly, Mr. Garrett, thanks for your interest in, you were here on the front end with all the debate over whether or not we even tackle such a major project, and thank goodness we did. I made the comment not long ago, I think that we were right to the end. We almost lost this beautiful building, and thankfully we came in time and really have a jewel that we can take forward for a lot of years. You were there through the whole thing.
Well, that's very kind of you, Mr. Chairman. Mostly, again, just as a son of Wyoming, I got to give a shout out to Wendy too. If there was anybody here that was here from the very beginning, it was Wendy. And I hope that we clone her for the next 100 years because thank you very much.
All right, do we have any other public comment? Welcome, please identify yourself and address the committee.
Oh, there we go, got a green light. Well, as Bill knows, I've been around here for a long, long time. I've covered the legislature as a media person for over 20 years. I have to tell you, my mom came one year, before you redid it. She loved it the way it was, but she would absolutely fall in love with it now the way it is. Unfortunately, she passed. But I have to say, as a media person, and I will, Wendy has helped us with almost everything, and she's done a great job here doing this. But I have to tell you, it's modern and classic at the same time. The modern conveniences, the bathrooms on every floor, which is helpful, but also just beautiful rooms. Yeah, this room, that room, I've said this before, it's so beautiful and it's so modern, and all the modern touches that are here that are built into the classic architecture of this building. So thank you, as a citizen and as a media person, thank you. All right.
Thank you. Well, and I think that that's what has made this process so challenging, not in a bad way, but making sure we're honoring the character of this building. But then we have the extension, which is a substantially different space. So making sure those two spaces jive, but, have some cohesive thought, but then both respect the area around them. So.
Well, Madam Chairman, I think also the challenge of representing an amazing executive branch of government that we've been privileged to have, and then I think a legislature that has led the way through the years, and you've got a different branch of government there, and so we've really had quite a few things to balance, and we will have going forward. But I like where we are, and I think we're ready to proceed from here. So it's good stuff.
Awesome.
Just one last check. Is there any additional public comment? Okay, with that, Mr. Co-Chair, I would note I too was born in Casper and got to Cheyenne as quick as I could.
Well, I'm not coming here except just once in a while. then I go back home to,
So, Mr. oh,
well,
go
once again, Madam Co-Chair, I do want to thank Representative Banks.
Yes.
I don't mean to pick on you, Representative, but thank you for being here today. And I don't know if you have any comments about this process that you've sat through for over a year, or about the time you've spent in the House of Representatives. The microphone's yours if you'd like.
Thanks. No, it's just, I mean, it's obviously been an honor, and the building, there's not a day that I walk into the Capitol and I'm not grateful for my service, for the history that has gone on there and the history that will continue there. And that I don't remember that and reflect on, and what we're doing here sort of builds on that. So I've been grateful to be part of the process of the whole legislature, but particularly this process as well as enhancing the building for future generations. So it's been great. So thank you very much.
We wish you well, Representative, and I know we'll see you along the way. Thank you again for your service. That's all I've got, Madam Co-Chairman.
Me too, Mr. Chairman. So I guess with that, I don't know if we need a motion to adjourn, or if I can just, or if we can just definitively.
Well, I would so move, tell you that.
Can we get a second, Representative Banks?
You bet. Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. All right, with that, we